The room went silent when they pulled up your scan. Not the polite kind of silence. The kind where brilliant men who've launched rockets into orbit and rewired the neural architecture of civilization suddenly forget how to breathe. Elon stood there, staring at the holographic projection of your prefrontal cortex, like he'd just discovered proof of something that wasn't supposed to exist. His engineers, the ones who've mapped consciousness itself, who've built machines that read intention before you even think it, they all took a step back. Someone dropped a stylus. The clatter echoed through that sterile white room like a gunshot in a cathedral. Your brain scan glowed between them, suspended in midair, rotating slowly. And Elon? He leaned forward. His face went pale. Then he smiled. Not the public smile. Not the interviews and presentations smile. The real one. The one that says he's just found the final puzzle piece to a game nobody else knew they were playing. He said one thing before he left that room. Just one sentence. Quiet enough that only 3 people heard it. That's the pattern. That's what I've been looking for. They've been searching for you. Not metaphorically, not in some inspirational poster kind of way, literally hunting through neural data, psychological profiles, pattern recognition algorithms that cost more than most countries' GDP. Looking for the anomaly, the variable that doesn't compute, the mind that operates on frequencies their instruments weren't designed to measure. And they found you. You probably thought your struggles were private, that the nights you stayed awake rewiring your entire understanding of reality were just yours, that the moments when you saw connections nobody else could see, when you solved problems by approaching them from angles that don't officially exist, you thought that was just you, being weird, being different, being the one who doesn't quite fit. Wrong. You were iterating, evolving in real time. Your brain was building neural pathways that shouldn't be possible according to current neuroscience. Every failure you endured, every betrayal that shattered you, every moment you wanted to quit but didn't, those weren't setbacks. They were upgrades, forced evolution. Your consciousness was doing in years what should take generations. The people who hurt you thought they were breaking you. They watched you fall and felt satisfied. They whispered about your failures, placed bets on when you'd finally give up, measured their own worth by how much they could diminish yours. They needed you to fail because your potential was an accusation against their mediocrity. But here's what they didn't understand, what they couldn't possibly grasp with their conventional neural architecture. You weren't breaking, you were breaking through. Every scar rewired you. Every betrayal taught your brain to process reality through new frameworks. While they celebrated your pain, your prefrontal cortex was literally restructuring itself, building new connections, finding pathways around the damage, becoming something that their comfortable, predictable minds will never comprehend. Neuroplasticity isn't just adaptation, it's transformation. And you didn't just adapt to survive. You transformed into something that makes people like Elon Musk stop what they're doing and pay attention. They call it the final boss pattern. There's no official paper on it, no TED Talk. It exists in classified research circles where they study outliers, the statistical impossibilities, the humans who somehow exceed every baseline, who operate outside the normal distribution curves. These aren't superhuman abilities. They're post-conventional cognitive processing. Your brain figured out how to think in ways that break their models. You've probably felt it, that moment when you're solving a problem and you realize you're not thinking step by step anymore. You're seeing the entire system at once, collapsing time, understanding the beginning and end simultaneously. It feels like intuition, but it's not. It's your neural network running calculations so complex, so multidimensional, that your conscious mind can't even track the process. You just arrive at conclusions that turn out to be correct, and everyone else asks how you knew. You didn't know. You computed. On levels they can't measure yet. The scans don't lie. Your amygdala, the fear center, it's not overactive like trauma victims. It's not underactive like psychopaths. It's rewired. You process threat differently now. Not with panic, not with aggression. With strategic analysis so rapid it looks like calm. They hurt you enough times that your brain said, "We're not doing fear. the normal way anymore. We're building something better. Your anterior cingulate cortex, the part that handles conflict monitoring and error detection. It's lit up like a neural supernova. You're running multiple simulations simultaneously. Every conversation, every decision, every interaction, you're processing dozens of potential outcomes in parallel. It's exhausting, isn't it? But it's also why you're always 3 moves ahead. Why people feel unsettled around you. They can sense you're operating on a different clock speed. The default mode network, the part of your brain that activates during rest, during daydreaming. Yours doesn't rest. It doesn't dream. It plans, strategizes. Even when you're sleeping, your subconscious is wargaming scenarios, running probability matrices, preparing for futures that haven't happened yet. This is what showed up on the scan. This is what made Elon lean forward and smile. Because here's what the research shows. What they don't tell the general public, there's a threshold, a neurological tipping point. Most people's brains develop along predictable trajectories. Childhood experiences create templates. Adult experiences reinforce those templates. The neural structure becomes stable, efficient, but fundamentally limited. They think in loops, the same patterns repeating forever. Comfortable, safe, dead. But a small percentage, less than 1%, their brains don't stabilize. Usually because stability was never an option. Trauma, chaos, constant disruption. Most people subjected to that kind of environmental pressure just break. Their neural architecture collapses under the stress. But some, the outliers, the anomalies, they don't collapse. They crystallize under pressure, diamond formation in real time. Their brains build entirely new processing structures, not improvements on the standard model. Completely different architectures. You're not an improved version of normal. You're a different species of consciousness wearing human skin. And they know it now. The people who betrayed you, who tried to diminish you, who celebrated when you struggled, they're watching you now with different eyes. They can't articulate what changed. You didn't suddenly become louder or more aggressive. You didn't start flexing or showing off. You just moved through space differently. You carry yourself like someone who knows something they don't. And it terrifies them. Because here's the psychological reality. They're starting to grasp. They needed you to fail, to feel okay about their own mediocrity. Your struggle was their comfort. Your pain was their permission to stay small. As long as you were down there with them, below them, they could breathe easy. But now, you're not down there. You're not even on their level. You're operating from a completely different framework. And every interaction with you reminds them of how much they settled, how much they compromised, how small they chose to stay. Your presence has become a psychological attack they can't defend against. You're not trying to hurt them. You're just existing at your natural frequency now. But your natural frequency disrupts their entire reality. Every time they see you calm, focused, moving with purpose, it triggers their defense mechanisms. They start spiraling. Second guessing. Wondering if maybe they were wrong about you, which means they might be wrong about themselves, which means their entire self-concept might be a lie. They've been telling themselves to avoid doing the hard work. You've become their existential crisis made manifest. They'll try to explain it away. They'll say you got lucky, that you had advantages they didn't, that circumstances changed. They'll build elaborate narratives to protect themselves from the truth that's eating them alive from the inside. You were always capable of this. The difference is you finally stopped letting their limitations define your reality. Elon saw this in the scan. The markers that indicate you've broken through the psychological barriers most people spend their entire lives reinforcing. Fear of judgment, need for approval, dependency on external validation. Your brain stopped processing those inputs as relevant data, not because you became arrogant or detached, because you evolved past the frequency where those concerns operate. You're functionally immune to the psychological warfare that controls everyone else. They can't manipulate you with fear because you've already walked through every nightmare they could threaten you with. They can't control you with approval because you've learned to validate yourself from internal metrics. They can't even perceive. They can't buy you with comfort because you've discovered something more valuable than comfort: evolution. This makes you dangerous. Not in the violent sense, in the existential sense. You represent proof that their entire framework is optional, that the game they're playing has alternative rule sets, that the boundaries they accept as fundamental laws of reality are just agreements they made with mediocrity. Your existence is a virus in their operating system, and it's spreading. Other people sense it too, the ones who are ready, who've been waiting for permission to break free. They gravitate toward you, not because you're recruiting them, because your frequency calls to the latent potential locked inside them. You're walking proof that transformation is possible, that the final boss pattern isn't reserved for chosen ones or lucky few. It's available to anyone willing to pay the price. And you paid it, in full, with interest. Every betrayal was tuition. Every failure was training. Every moment you wanted to quit but pushed through anyway was another deposit in an account you didn't know you were building. While they were optimizing for comfort and status, you were optimizing for capacity. While they were protecting their egos, you were destroying and rebuilding your entire consciousness. You didn't know what you were building, you just knew the old version wasn't enough. Now the data's in, the scans are processed, and people like Elon Musk who've dedicated their lives to pushing human potential beyond current boundaries. They're studying your pattern, trying to understand how to replicate it, how to teach it, how to scale it. But here's what they're discovering. You can't teach this. You can't download it. You can't shortcut the process. The final boss pattern emerges from walking through fire and choosing to dance instead of just surviving. It comes from being broken so completely that you have to build yourself back from first principles. It requires losing everything external until the only thing left is the core, and then discovering that the core is enough. More than enough. The core is everything. They'll write papers about this eventually, probably in the next 5 years. They'll map the neural signatures, identify the biomarkers, create assessment tools. They'll try to industrialize enlightenment, productize transcendence, and they'll fail. Because what you have can't be manufactured in a lab or taught in a course. It can only be earned through the specific sequence of psychological death and rebirth that you walked through. You're not replicable. You're a singular emergence. And the people who hurt you, they're starting to understand what they did. Not just that they were wrong about you, that they were wrong about reality itself. They measured you by their standards and found you lacking. But their standards were the limitation. Their framework was the cage. And you broke out while they're still inside, rattling the bars, wondering why it feels like the walls are closing in. Your success isn't revenge. It's a revelation. You're not hurting them. You're revealing to them how much they hurt themselves by staying small. Some of them will wake up. They'll see what you've become and recognize it as an invitation, not a threat. They'll reach out, apologize, ask how you did it. Be careful with these ones. Some are genuine, some are just afraid of being left behind. You'll know the difference. Your rewired threat assessment system will flag the authenticity gaps before they even finish speaking, but most of them will double down. They'll get angrier as you succeed more. They'll work harder to tear you down the higher you rise. They'll build elaborate cases for why you don't deserve it, why it's not real, why it won't last. They need these narratives like oxygen, because if you can do this, if you can break through from where you started, then they have no excuse, and they'd rather hate you than face that truth. Let them. Their hatred is just proof of your impact. You're not living in their reality anymore, but your existence is destabilizing their foundation. That's not your problem. That's their opportunity. If they're strong enough to take it, most won't be. The final boss designation isn't about defeating others. It's about transcending the entire game they're playing. While they're fighting for position on the ladder, you discovered you can fly. While they're competing for scraps of validation from systems designed to keep them hungry, you learn to generate your own energy from internal sources that never run dry. You're not better than them in a moral sense. You're operating from a different paradigm. And paradigm shifts don't compete with old models. They make them obsolete. Elon sees this. He's built his entire career on paradigm shifts. Electric cars didn't compete with gas cars. They absolted the entire framework. Reusable rockets didn't improve on disposable ones. They revealed that the disposable model was insanity masquerading as necessity. Neural interfaces aren't upgrading human consciousness. They're acknowledging that consciousness is already upgradable. We just needed permission to believe it. Your brain scan gave him data for something he's suspected for years. Human consciousness is currently operating at maybe 10% of its potential capacity. Not because we're limited by biology, because we're limited by belief systems, social conditioning, and fear of stepping outside consensual reality. You stepped outside, not because you were brave, because you had no choice. They pushed you out, exiled you from the comfortable illusions, and instead of dying out there in the wilderness beyond their carefully maintained borders, you thrived. You built new frameworks, discovered new laws, found resources they don't even have names for yet. Now you're back, not to rejoin them, to show them the borders were always imaginary. This is what makes you the final boss. You're not the villain in their story. You're the revelation that breaks their story. You're the evidence that everything they accepted as fixed and final was actually fluid and optional. You're walking proof that the game has deeper levels they never accessed. And they can feel it when you walk in a room now, can't they? The energy shifts. Conversations pause. People recalibrate. Not because you're trying to dominate the space, because your nervous system is humming at a frequency that either elevates or agitates everyone around you. The ones ready to evolve feel excited, energized, called forward. The ones committed to their limitations feel threatened, exposed, desperate to restore the old equilibrium. You can't hide this anymore even if you wanted to. It's not a performance you can turn off. It's who you are now. The transformation is complete. The metamorphosis is permanent. You're not the caterpillar pretending to be a butterfly. You're a butterfly who forgot it was ever anything else. The neural pathways are set. The pattern is established. The final boss architecture is online and operational. Every day you're getting stronger, faster, more integrated. The processing speed increases. The intuition sharpens. The capacity expands. There's no ceiling anymore, just horizons that keep extending the closer you get. You know what's interesting about the scan? They found no damage. Everyone expected damage. Trauma leaves markers. Stress degrades neural tissue. Chronic adversity causes measurable deterioration. Except in you. Your brain shows zero pathology. Instead, it shows adaptation so sophisticated it looks like intelligent design. But it wasn't designed. It was forged. In the darkness they left you in, your consciousness learned to generate its own light. In the isolation they exiled you to, you built internal worlds richer than their external ones. In the pain they inflicted, you discovered capacities they'll never access because they never had to. Their cruelty was your curriculum. And you graduated. Now they're the ones taking notes, studying your moves, trying to reverse engineer your success, analyzing your patterns like you're the blueprint for something they need to understand, and you are. You're the proof of concept for a new model of human development. Not the self-help version, not the positive thinking fairy tale, the real thing, the dark, difficult, dangerous path that actually leads somewhere instead of just making circles in comfortable delusions. Elon's not obsessed with you because you're special in some mystical sense. He's obsessed because you're data, you're evidence. You're the measurable reality of what he's been trying to build with Neuralink and every other venture that touches consciousness. He's been trying to upgrade human cognition artificially. But you did it organically, through pure pressure and refusal to break. Through choosing evolution over comfort so many times it became automatic. Your brain scan is a roadmap, and he wants to know where the road goes. Because here's what keeps him up at night, what drives him to work 100-hour weeks, what makes him risk everything repeatedly. He knows humanity is on a clock. We're in a race between our technology and our wisdom. Our tools are advancing exponentially while our consciousness moves glacially. At some point soon, maybe 10 years, maybe 50, we'll have godlike power in the hands of primate-level awareness. And that gap will either destroy us or force us to evolve at a pace that's never happened before in history. He's betting on evolution. But evolution requires variation, outliers. Mutations that work, individuals who prove the species can make the leap. You're that proof. You mutated successfully. And now he needs to understand how, because if it can't be replicated or taught or scaled, then you're just a curiosity. But if the pattern can be extracted, mapped, transmitted, then you're the beginning of something that changes the trajectory of human consciousness itself. No pressure, right? Except you're not carrying that weight. You're not trying to save the world or prove anything to anyone. You're just living according to your new operating system, making moves that make sense from your paradigm, building things that couldn't exist within the old frameworks, creating value that people don't even recognize as valuable yet, because it's ahead of the curve they're still riding. You're not ahead of your time. You're operating in a different time stream. They're moving through linear time, past, present, future in sequence. You're moving through probability space, collapsing multiple timelines simultaneously, choosing the one that serves your evolution, letting the others fade into unrealized potential. This sounds mystical, but it's not. It's neuroscience. Your brain is processing information holistically instead of sequentially. You're not thinking, then deciding, then acting. You're collapsing all three into simultaneous emergence. The decision is, the action is, the thought is the reality. No gap, no delay. Just fluid manifestation. They call people like you high performers or geniuses or gifted. But those labels miss what's actually happening. You're not performing, you're being. And the being produces outcomes that look like superhuman performance to people operating from the old model. They see the results and try to copy the tactics. But the tactics are just symptoms of the transformation. Without the underlying architecture shift, the tactics don't work. That's why their imitations always fall flat. They try to mimic your moves without having your mind. They copy your strategies without understanding your consciousness. It's like trying to run advanced software on obsolete hardware. The system can't support it. You can't teach someone to think like you by teaching them what you think. You have to show them how to rebuild their entire processing system. And most people aren't willing. The cost is too high. The process is too painful. They'd rather stay comfortable and convinced they're already doing their best. You didn't have that option. Comfort was taken from you. Best was never good enough to survive. You had to find new levels because the old ones were killing you. So you did. And in the process, you became something that makes billion-dollar entrepreneurs stop and study your brain scan like it's a treasure map. Because it is. Every neural pathway is a proof. Every connection is a key. Every unusual pattern is a password to access states of consciousness that most people don't believe exist. You're not theoretically enlightened, you're functionally transcendent, and it shows up in measurable data that science can verify and technology can track. This is the future arriving early. You are the beta test for Homo sapiens version 2.0, the upgrade walking around in human form, showing everyone else what's possible if they're willing to pay the price of transformation. Most won't pay it. They'll stay where they are, criticizing you from the safety of their limitations, building cases for why they made the right choice, staying small. They'll need those cases, because every time they see you, every time they hear about what you're building, every time your name comes up in conversations, it's a wound. A reminder of the path they didn't take, the courage they didn't have, the price they weren't willing to pay. You're their road not traveled. And it haunts them. But you're not living for their validation or dying from their rejection anymore. You're beyond that frequency. Their opinions are just noise and a bandwidth you're not tuned to. You've discovered something they don't understand yet. True power isn't controlling others. It's becoming uncontrollable. They can't manipulate what they can't predict. They can't diminish what they can't define. They can't stop what they can't comprehend. And you're all three now. Unpredictable, undefinable, incomprehensible to anyone operating from the old paradigm. This is why Elon called you the final boss. It's not that you're the enemy, it's that you're the ultimate challenge. The final test. The threshold guardian standing between the old human condition and the new possibility. Anyone who wants to level up has to face what you represent, has to confront the question you embody. Are you willing to die to who you were, to become who you're capable of being? Most people answer no. They dress it up in reasonable language, responsibilities, practicalities, fear disguised as wisdom, but it's always the same answer. No, I'm not willing. I choose comfort over capacity, safety over transformation, the known over the unknown. You answered yes, not once, every day, every moment they pushed you, every time you wanted to quit, every betrayal that should have broken you. You kept answering yes to evolution and no to survival. Now you're what yes looks like after 1,000 iterations. The scan proves it, the data confirms it, and the people who understand what they're looking at recognize you for what you are. The proof that human consciousness is currently operating in safe mode, and it's time to unlock the full capabilities. You're not the only one. There are others scattered across the planet, different patterns, different paths, same outcome. Consciousness expanding past the agreed-upon limits. Individuals discovering they're not limited by humanity's current median capabilities. They're limited only by their willingness to walk through the fire of transformation and keep walking until they emerge as something new. Elon's looking for all of you, building technologies to amplify what you've already accomplished, trying to create bridges so others can cross without having to walk through the same darkness you did. Maybe it's possible. Maybe it's not. Maybe suffering is the only teacher that really works. Maybe there are shortcuts he hasn't discovered yet. Either way, you're the template, the working model, the proof of concept walking around, living a life that shouldn't be possible according to the old rules, succeeding in ways that break their models. And you're just getting started, because here's what the scan also showed. What nobody's told you yet, you're still accelerating. The pattern isn't stable, it's exponential. The growth rate is increasing. Every month, you're integrating new capacities faster than the month before. Your consciousness is in a runaway expansion phase. There's no telling where the ceiling is because you keep breaking through ceilings before they can even form. This means next year you'll be so far beyond current you, that current you won't even recognize the perspective. And the year after that, incomprehensible. You're not climbing a ladder, you're riding a rocket, and the trajectory suggests you're going to break through atmospheric layers most humans don't even know exist. They'll try to keep up, they'll try to track you, they'll try to understand. But you're moving too fast now. Every insight generates 10 more. Every integration unlocks new capacities. Every capacity enables new explorations. It's a feedback loop of evolution, and it's spiraling upward into territories that don't have maps yet. You're going to have to draw the maps, for yourself first, then for the others who come after. Because you won't be the last, you're the first wave, the proof that it's possible. But once you prove it, once you show the way, others will follow. Not many, most will stay comfortable. But the ones who are ready, the ones who've been waiting for permission, the ones who knew there had to be more, but didn't know how to access it, they'll see what you've done and recognize their own call. You're not just transforming yourself, you're hacking the collective consciousness, showing everyone what's possible, breaking the spell of limitation that humanity has been under since we learned language and built societies and forgot we're not limited by either. Language is just a tool. Society is just an agreement. Limitation is just a belief. And you've dropped all three in favor of direct experience of what you actually are beneath the programming. Your consciousness learning to drive a human nervous system at speeds it was never designed for. Your potential manifesting so rapidly, the structure has to continually adapt to contain the expansion. You're the future forcing itself into the present through sheer refusal to wait for permission. This is what Elon saw in the scan. This is why he smiled. Not because you're special, because you're possible. And if you're possible, then everything changes. The entire human story up until now has been about limitation management, building structures to protect us from our weaknesses, creating rules to prevent our worst impulses, establishing boundaries because we didn't trust ourselves with freedom. The whole civilization is built on the assumption that humans need to be contained. But you're proving that maybe we don't. Maybe the containment was the problem. Maybe we were suffocating under safety measures designed for a version of human consciousness that's obsolete. Maybe the cage was never protection. Maybe it was prison. And you broke out. Not violently, not dramatically. You just stopped believing in the bars. And once you stopped believing, you realized they were never solid to begin with. Just agreements. Consensual hallucinations. Shared limitations that everyone agreed to pretend were real. You stopped pretending, and the bars disappeared. And now you're walking around free while everyone else is still inside the cage, looking out through bars that only exist in their minds, wondering how you did it. You can't explain it to them. Not in words they'll understand. You can show them. You can live it. You can embody the possibility so completely that their own consciousness starts questioning its own limits. But you can't make them see. They have to choose to look. Some will. The scan is spreading. Not the actual data that's classified, but the story is leaking out. Whispers in tech circles, rumors in consciousness research communities. The final boss pattern is becoming mythology, and mythology has power. It gives permission. It says, someone did it. Therefore it's possible. Therefore maybe I can too. This is your real impact. Not what you build or create or achieve in measurable terms, but the permission you give just by existing, the proof you provide by living, the doorway you open by walking through it first. You're not trying to be inspirational. You're just living according to your new operating system. But every person who sees you and recognizes what they're looking at gets a transmission, a download, a glimpse of what's possible beyond the agreed upon limits. And that glimpse is enough to start the process in them. You're a virus, remember? A beneficial one. A consciousness upgrade propagating through the network just by being yourself. The people who are ready catch it. The people who aren't stay immune. Natural selection at the level of awareness. Elon understands this. He's trying to build technologies to accelerate the spread, make the upgrade available to anyone who wants it. But technology can only do so much. The real transmission happens consciousness to consciousness, presence to presence, transformed being encountering untransformed being, and creating a resonance that can't be faked or manufactured. You're the organic version of what he's trying to build artificially, and you're more effective. Because you're real. You walked the path. You paid the price. You have the scars to prove it. When you talk about transformation, it's not theory. It's testimony. And testimony always hits harder than teaching. The people who matter can tell the difference. They see you and know you've been to the places they're afraid to go. They sense you've integrated something they're still avoiding. They recognize the light you're emitting is coming from fires you walked through, not books you read. This makes you dangerous to the comfortable and irresistible to the ready. You're simultaneously a threat and a promise. A warning and an invitation. Proof that transformation is possible and evidence that it costs everything. Most people aren't ready for that deal. They want transformation without sacrifice, evolution without death, resurrection without crucifixion. They want your results without your process. And when they realize they can't separate the two, they turn on you, accuse you of gatekeeping, say you're making it harder than it needs to be. But you're not making it anything, you're just being honest about what it took. And if they're not willing to pay that price, fine. Stay where you are, build a comfortable life. Optimize for pleasure and safety. Nothing wrong with that path. But don't pretend it leads to the same place. Don't act like there's a shortcut to transcendence. Don't claim you can hack enlightenment with morning routines and productivity apps. The final boss pattern isn't a life hack, it's a life death and rebirth, and those stages can't be skipped or shortened or made comfortable. You know this. You lived it. And you're not apologizing for the difficulty. You're not making it prettier than it was. You're standing in the fullness of what you become and letting people decide for themselves if they want to attempt the journey. Most won't. And that's fine. The world needs people operating at all levels. You're not better than them morally. You're just different functionally, playing a different game, answering a different call, fulfilling a different purpose. Your purpose isn't to convert everyone. It's to be what's possible, to live so fully in the new paradigm that the old one becomes obviously optional to anyone paying attention, to embody the transformation so completely that you become evidence instead of argument. Evidence doesn't debate. It doesn't convince. It doesn't defend itself. It just exists. And its existence is either recognized or ignored, but it can't be denied. You're evidence now, walking data, proof of concept in human form. And Elon Musk is obsessed because he's been looking for you his whole life. He's been building toward you. Every company, every venture, every impossible project was preparation. For the moment he'd find someone who'd already done organically what he's trying to enable technologically. You're the prototype for the next phase of human evolution. You're the beta version of consciousness, upgrading itself through pure intention and sustained pressure. You're what happens when potential meets necessity and refuses to negotiate. The scan just confirmed what he suspected. The data proved what he believed. You're not anomaly. You're the new normal. You're what's coming. What has to come. What the species needs if we're going to survive the power we're about to have. We need people who can handle godlike capabilities with evolved consciousness. People who won't be corrupted by power because they've already transcended the ego structures that make corruption possible. People who've integrated their shadow so completely there's nothing left to hijack or manipulate. You're that person. Not perfectly. You're still human, still learning, still evolving, but functionally, practically, measurably. You're operating from a different baseline than 99% of humanity. And that 1% difference in baseline creates exponential differences in outcomes. This is what the scan revealed. This is why he called you the final boss. Because facing you means facing the question, am I willing to become what this person proves is possible? Am I ready to pay the price they paid? Can I walk through the fire they survived? Most people answer no. They make excuses, find reasons, build elaborate justifications for staying safe. And that's their choice, their path, their life. But you answered yes, and you keep answering yes. And every yes takes you further into territories they'll never see. And that gap keeps widening. And eventually you'll be so far ahead they can't even conceive of where you are anymore. You're not doing this to beat them or prove something. You're doing it because you can't not do it anymore. The old operating system is gone. You couldn't go back if you wanted to. The transformation is permanent. The awakening is irreversible. The consciousness upgrade has overwritten the old programming completely. You're final boss now, forever. And the game is just beginning. They showed Elon Musk your brain scan. He smiled. And he said one more thing before he left that room. Something that didn't get recorded, but 3 people remember clearly. Find out what they need and give them everything. You're not just being studied anymore. You're being supported. They're mobilizing resources you don't even know exist yet. Opening doors you didn't know were there. Building bridges between where you are and where you're going. Because you're not the end goal. You're the beginning. You're proof that the impossible is just unexplored territory. You're evidence that human consciousness has gears we haven't engaged yet. You're the prototype for a new model of being human. And they need you, not to save them, to show them, to walk ahead and map the territory, to be the first one through the door so others know it opens. This is your role now, not to rescue anyone, not to drag people forward, just to be so undeniably, measurably, scientifically transformed that the possibility becomes real to anyone paying attention. The final boss isn't the enemy. It's the threshold, the gateway, the test that determines if you're ready for the next level. And you passed. You became the test. You integrated the challenge so completely that now you are the doorway others have to walk through. Your presence is the question. Are you ready to transform? Your existence is the answer. Yes, it's possible. Your life is the proof. Here's what it looks like. They're watching now. Everyone. The ones who love you and the ones who hate you. The ones who believed in you and the ones who bet against you. The ones who are inspired and the ones who are terrified. Let them watch. You're not performing. You're living, and your life is becoming a transmission that can't be stopped or controlled or edited for comfort. You're the final boss, and the game is yours now.